So first of all, thank you everybody for joining us today. We are happy to have you here and super excited about the wonderful group that we have participating with us today from Indiana University online. We are going to be talking about how to create a student-centered approach to how we support students when we are supporting them online or at a distance. Couple of logistics. First of all, we are recording this. You probably caught that when you came in, so we will send that recording out afterward. We also encourage you to be part of the conversation and the dialogue as we move along. So feel free to post questions, comments, whether in the chat area. One thing that has changed in Zoom is when you open the chat, it's going to default, I believe, to just the hosts and panelists. So we would encourage you to just change that setting to everyone so that when you post your comments or questions, the rest of the participants can see them. And I am also joined today, so I should say I'm Katie Kapler. I'm co-founder and CEO at InScribe. And we are your host for today. I'm joined by my colleague, Danielle Bonner, who is going to just help keep us on track. She'll keep an eye on what's coming into the chat. So if we do have questions coming in there, we'll do our best to answer them throughout the session. And Danielle knows she is always empowered to just interrupt us so we can get to those as well. We would also love to know who you are. So alongside your weather report, please let us know, who you are, where you're coming from, and if there is something specific that you're working on, thinking about, that you really hope you're going to get out of the discussion today or that we touch on today, let us know. Because either we will touch on it, or if not, we'll sort of we'll add it to the narrative as we go along. One other thing that we are doing is that we are creating a post-webinar networking event. So we'll wrap up the webinar at about 1/4 and then move over into a different platform where we've created a networking space. And that gives you the opportunity to talk to each other, but also to talk directly to our presenters. So what we'll do is at around 1/4, we'll close out the conversation here. Danielle will post a link to the next platform in the chat feature, and we invite you to come join us there and just continue the conversation or just say hi. And with that, I am going to invite our amazing panel to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about, your background, your role at IU Online. And then we'll jump into the discussion. So take it away, Whitney.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We're super excited to be here with all of you today. So I am Whitney Powell. I'm the Director for Enrollment Management and Student Services with the Office of Online Education, also affectionately known as IU Online. So I oversee a portfolio of really all those student-facing elements. So undergrad and graduate admissions, undergrad and grad student services, academic advising for both platforms, financial services, career services, and a little bit in the IT and marketing space. We have a team that we partner with within our university communications and marketing team. So really excited to be joined by two of my amazing associate directors, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Tinkle. I'm the Associate Director of Enrollment Management. So my primary responsibility is really the online undergraduate application and admissions process, as well as student financial services. So my my timeline is from prospect to admit. And then once they're admitted, I hand them over to the next fabulous associate director.
Thank you very much, and it's wonderful to see everyone this afternoon or this morning. My name is Kayla Scroggins. I'm the Associate Director for Online Student Services, and so I work seamlessly with our enrollment management, Stephanie Tinkle, to ensure a seamless handoff in the post-admission space, and I foster the student experience from admissions to graduation and beyond. So that includes all of the wonderful things that Whitney mentioned in her portfolio.
Well, welcome, ladies. I'm so excited. What a wonderful group. I think you basically do every job at IU in some capacity. So I think this is going to be a lively and excellent conversation. I am going to take just a quick minute to introduce people to InScribe. So if you're not familiar with InScribe, we're a virtual community platform. We create spaces for students to connect with peers, faculty, and staff. So they have a place to go anytime they need help, they want to connect, or they just need advice on something or want to know somebody else is out there. So we do a lot of work with non-traditional students, essentially students who are learning online, working, parenting, basically that need that extra level of flexibility in terms of how they're accessing support and additional ways to connect with other people across their programs. And so we're going to zero in on the work that these ladies have done, which InScribe is just a part of, but I'm excited to share your story. And I think part of why we were really excited to have this conversation today is we just came out of spring conference season, which probably some of you have also been traveling to conferences. And other than, ChatGPT and that conversation, I think the number one thing that I heard from institutions at the conferences I attend was an increased awareness around things like sense of belonging, peer connection, and how to really be intentional about how we support online students in particular. And I think it's a challenge that many organizations want to achieve at, but haven't quite cracked the nut on yet. And so I hear a lot of people just sort of looking for practical ways that other people have solved this problem. What can we do to learn from each other? And so that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. Hopefully you learn something for your own organization. But again, if you've got cool things that you're doing at your school or university, please post them in the chat, because we would love for this to be a collaborative session where we're all learning from each other. With that, I'm going to invite you ladies to tell us a little bit about Indiana University. Pretty sure everyone on the call or on the webinar has heard of it, IU, but tell us a little bit about it and kind of what makes it unique.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Katie. So we were founded in 1820 as a public research institution. So our IU is actually composed of 7 campuses and 2 regional centers. So most notable are our 2 flagship campuses, so IU Bloomington and IU PUI. So across the campuses, we offer over 930 academic programs. And we are excited to share that our current total enrollment is right around 85,000 students, which consists about approximately 7,200 international students from 164 countries. Next slide.
Awesome. And then, and then within there, let's hear a little bit about the online education.
Yeah, so we've had a long-standing history within the online space. So we actually delivered our first distance education course back in 1995, and we really started to see that growth in the early 2000s. And that's when President McRobbie really saw the need to establish an infrastructure to support this initiative better. So hence the creation of the Office of Online Education and IU Online. So some of you may be saying, hey, what's the difference? Don't worry, I was the same way when I joined the team. So we'll kind of break the difference down. So the Office of Online Education is the physical administration office. So it supports online education, the services, and the experiences across all IU campuses in a collaborative model. But IU Online was really created as that single brand and to be leveraged to maximize recruitment and marketing activities and build that market awareness. So this brand is really how people identify our online programs, both internally and externally to IU. We like to note that neither the Office of Online Education nor IU Online are degree granting entities. So thus the student enrollment and the program are owned by one of the campuses. Next slide.
Wonderful. So you definitely have some unique challenges managing across so many different campuses and organizations in a system. But let's talk a little bit about, like, specifically what were you struggling with when you were thinking about supporting your students and as they were coming in or onboarding? What were some of the things that you were thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So as growth, you always uncover new things, right? So what you're seeing right here is where we are today, but that's definitely not where we started. So to provide some additional context, back in fall 2015, we only had 101 online programs and approximately 7,000 students in online programs. So fast forward to today, we currently offer over 220 fully online programs and enroll more than 8,000 students, which that makes about 9% of the total university headcount. So to further demonstrate the interest in online, so we currently more than 11,000 students, or 13% of the university headcount, are taking all classes online. So they may not be in a fully online program, but they're taking their coursework all online. And then breaking that down one step further, more than 46,000 students are taking one or more classes online. So we definitely have that interest out there. Lastly, the regional campuses, 43% of their total credit hours are online. So as you can see, we definitely have that growing interest in the online space. So now that I've shared some context with you about how IU and online education is positioned at IU, we're going to shift into some of our challenges. So as we experienced the growth over the years in the online space, like I mentioned, we did uncover some challenges. So attempting to offer excellent services that were built for traditional campus-based students to the online population was not always meeting that 24/7 expectation of the online population. So online students have that desire for that always on 24/7 service model. And we needed to meet them where they were, because we found, they're not operating in that traditional 8 to 5 workday. We also uncovered that expanding services presented a need to develop post-admission communication in a centralized student hub, right? So as we continued to build out all of these services for the online population, we needed that one-stop shop that they could access all of those fantastic resources. We also needed to look at our overall approach and to determine how to ensure that it was scalable, right, into the future to meet that market demand. And lastly, we know that students want that sense of belonging, even in the online environment, and that sense of community. And we did not have enough opportunities to support that type of engagement. So what did we do? Where did we go? So now that we'd uncovered our challenges, we started to really research to find out the solutions in hope of finding and creating that seamless student experience. So as I'm sure with many of you, we stay up to date and ground ourselves in research. So we really utilize research to adopt best practices, challenge the status quo, and pursue innovation. So this slide represents a lot of the professional organizations that members of enrollment management and/or student services hold memberships or affiliated with. So we really utilize that while researching. So as we began using research to explore and generate ideas for our student services model, and let me say, structuring student services model in an online environment can definitely be challenging at best, right? So we learned that throughout our experience that there's really not that one size that fits all, but there tends to be 3 key elements that help form the decision. So on the slide, we kind of talked about, I think she's, okay, there we go. So centralization. So should we operate in a fully centralized or fully decentralized, semi-centralized? What makes sense for us and what's possible? So we relied on EdVentures. They did a poll with a lot of online educational leaders throughout, and centralization was not a given on the report at all. And then we did see on the report that there does seem to be the trend that the more academically focused the area is, the higher likelihood of it being decentralized. But there was far from a standard student services model. So we had to keep going, right? So the second part was integration. So does there need to be separate student services and/or models to serve on-campus students and online students? We found that most institutions do not currently separate these services. But is that going to change, and does that provide that student-centered approach that we're looking for? The final key consideration that we looked at regarding our student services model is to build services in-house or have them outsourced. So the research shows that majority are providing most services primarily in-house. A small percentage of the institutions are fully outsourced. We fall in that mostly in-house category, but we definitely leverage vended services where appropriate. And Kayla will talk more about how we've partnered with InScribe and other services to really meet the needs of our students and being truly student-centered.
Awesome. I love how you guys have, really leveraged all the knowledge that was already out there, the work. I mean, and you brought it all together. I'm sure a lot of people look at this list of resources that you tapped into and think, oh, I wish you could just share the details of your summary with me. But great to know that you were drawing on all of that knowledge. So you have all this information, you have this kind of problem that you're facing. How did you then figure out how to turn that into something actionable?
Yeah, absolutely, Katie. And I'd love to talk a little bit about this. So you'll hear me talk for a little bit. But ultimately, we know that one size doesn't fit all, and we have the research. We know our challenges, so we took a strategic approach. It was a multi-step, kind of multi-layered approach because we just can't do one thing, because as you pull one thread, you unravel 10 in the same process. So we essentially set out that we were going to develop multimodal communications and outreach plans in our post-admissions space. That was a dreaded space, very loose ownership of, is that admissions, is that enrollment management, is that student services? So our unit made the executive decision that it would be a single entity, a working group that handles the post-admission space. So in addition to those multimodal communications where we leverage some of our vended services, which I'll talk about, that's Salesforce, to build out, they're pretty robust. And we didn't include this in this presentation because we could probably talk a whole bunch about that. That's a scary plan. But essentially, it is that we are communicating via email to students. We are also leveraging our text messages. We also have human beings who call people still. We're not we partner with the call center at our university, but we aren't the call center. So when we call you, our guided onboarding team is reaching out to say hello, to provide resources and get you connected to all the wonderful things so that you can start your journey on the right foot and continue it and keep that momentum and stay engaged and motivated. So I want to let you know there's no one size. So we're doing a lot of different things. And as what Stephanie talked about in our challenges, that also means that we need a centralized place to put all of our student resources, connections, because we know the key is, at least the claim to fame of what we try to get, is 3 clicks or less. We want to get you to the resources that you can as easily and quickly as possible. So we developed a learning online at IU Hub, and that serves at that space. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, and I'll show you some examples here in a moment. We also knew that we're adopting this new student services model, as we were talking about, and the layers that is, and kind of pulling back and taking that away from maybe individual departments or schools and bringing that in-house and centralizing those services. We knew student services was one piece, but another piece of that, to make seamless student services, it's also having advisors right there in your back pocket, and to have your guided onboarding specialist help you, shepherd you through the way, and also then taking that next leap to actually schedule your advising appointment on that same phone call. And we are actively doing that now. And so we're bringing in up to, I think, 10 or 11 or 12 academic advisors within our portfolio over the next few weeks. So just more room for growth and wonderful opportunities. But also too,
Kayla,
yeah.
We do have a question in the chat. Would you mind if it looks like Whitney answered it live in the chat as well. But are you using Salesforce only in the enrollment management side, or are you using it in the Student Success Center as well?
We are using it everywhere. So there is no area or aspect of our portfolio, at least in enrollment management and student services, where we're not adopting Salesforce for our needs, because we know it's critical. Everybody needs to know what everybody said to a student, and that leveraging that in that way helps us do that so that it's seamless. So when a student calls, we can say exactly what the financial aid counselor said, what their advisor said, so on and so forth. So yes, across the portfolio we use.
Awesome. There's another question, and I see Whitney's already typing the answer in the chat. But what is your student to advisor ratio?
So our goal is 300 to 1. There you go. And our
There you go.
faithful leader is right there on there.
This is really just fact checking, right? To see if we both answer the same way.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how about Salesforce Access for faculty?
So that's some of our faculty directors in various campuses. I'll let Whitney kind of weigh in, but some of our faculty directors and some of the others that are leading other academic things, I'll just put that way. Yes, they do leverage CRM, but not widely adopted, I would say. We don't have a whole lot of faculty adopting Salesforce because they are already busy people doing wonderful things in research, hence we're a research institution. So we try to keep, not labor them with too many technologies and things. We just want them to bring their expertise and use it as best as possible.
Yeah, and I would just second what Kayla was saying. It's not restricted from faculty by any means, but primarily the place that we see faculty leverage it is in the kind of the decentralized graduate space, because a lot of that work is happening solely within the department. And there aren't any centralized units that are supporting that in those single campus programs. But we do have some faculty that just enjoy it and they choose to use it. But it's a pretty low adoption rate compared to what we see across service areas.
I'm going to hold off on the next couple of questions that are in the chat so that we can keep getting through the presentation here, but we will make sure that we address the questions that just came in a little bit later. And if we don't get to them, please join us for the networking session. You can absolutely ask those questions one-on-one.
Yeah, and before Katie jumps off this slide, I think the only thing I didn't address was the fact that we are very dedicated to providing a consistent sense of community and belonging with online students, adult learners. And so while we don't think we have this all cracked just yet in the virtual space, we are actively working and engaging and staying up on the research and talking to wonderful peers such as yourself about what we're doing, what we could retool and repurpose. So just to say, we're connecting, we're increasing our social media connections, we're hosting virtual info sessions, we've created our own outreach of NSO weeks or new student orientation weeks, if anyone's familiar with that. We've adopted that practice and brought it to the online virtual space, which has been really successful. And then we're also engaging in a student success event series. So where we bring in campus experts about some of our resources like mental health, a telehealth resources, which we'll get into, but partnering with them and bringing them in and we co-host these sessions, very similar webinar style, so that we bring those resources to students rather than them having to actively source out them. So we are proactively putting resources in their hands and putting them in the driver's seat of their own success.
Wonderful. I mean, a multimodal approach, which I think is also reflected in the next slide. Do you want me to just click them all through, or
you can go right ahead? So we've already talked.
Bring them all out here.
Yes. So
there we go.
I also forgot to mention in my intro, I also manage the majority of these partnerships. So this is a good one. That's part of my portfolio as well to keep student success. So that's one of the great things. So I'm very in tune to all of the resources. So we already kind of touched about Salesforce. We do implement that to create automated journeys, automated email sends where you can craft them. Those actions are not specific to a date and time of the maybe semester or in your process flow. It's action driven. So it's very sequential. So we use all of that. And we also do ad hoc communications and outreach. But yes, for all your Salesforce questions, I'm happy to answer. We also too partner with InScribe, hence why we're here today. We were an early adopter of InScribe and we're using that to foster continuing asynchronous student communication. So we're truly meeting students where they are, but more to come on all of that. We also partner with Mentor Collective, which is a peer mentoring service and vended service that we use. It's actually from an IU alumni. Jackson and IU Venture Capital actually was used to launch Mentor Collective at the very beginning. So as solidarity, we want to adopt and use services built by alumni because they've walked those shoes. And so we'd love to adapt them. So we do bring that together. We also have partnered, let's see here, where else I haven't gone. Financial literacy. Our university offers robust financial literacy, but it sometimes doesn't provide a holistic approach to students. And we know that because we are talking with folks from all walks of life. They need a little bit more than just financial aid. They may have debt and savings concerns. They might not know how to consolidate loans, like all of those real life things that we go to Google ourselves. We provide in a service called iGrad. We actually partner with iGrad and help with that. So we really do leverage. We do a lot of things in-house, like I want to reiterate, but we do also vend out when we know we don't have the in-house capacity to keep up with the demand. So hence all of this wonderful stuff. And just a few more, we partner with Motomatic. This is supplemental outreach that actually provides student encouragement through guideposts. So it's using social media usage to actually target, and it's motivational messaging. It's not a begrudging, go do this thing. It is a very nice advertising way, as you see from here, of how to engage with your resources. And it's constantly pulling real-time data. So if a student takes certain actions, we're showing them certain messaging to encourage them and keep them in persisting. And that has been very helpful. And also it's just wonderful to see students go, hey, I saw this image and this was really cool. Thanks. Like I resonated with it. So those are all those wonderful things. And then just a couple more. I was going to say, Katie, do you want to interrupt me?
Yeah, no,
I could go for days. No, just kidding. So I was going to say, we also recently adopted IU partners with LinkedIn Learning, and we have a wonderful catalog. We have just scaled that. Mostly faculty and staff have been involved in those conversations, have utilized those resources, and we knew this was an untapped resource. So to really see the whole student, we curated a few different catalogs for IU Online students specifically that we think are applicable to them and what their needs are. So we partnered through LinkedIn and we were able to do that. And they also host wonderful Rock Your Profile sessions for students who might be in their junior, senior years or sophomore years even. And we've partnered with them and offered webinars so students can kind of get the skinny on how to be career ready post IU degree. So there's some other aspects. And then we also partner with NAC on our peer tutoring, because while we have in-house online math and writing support, we know that that is not all encompassing of every program of the 220 we have. So we do partner with NAC to help fill in those service gaps, and we actively recruit and hire online students who have mastered and aced those classes to be a resource. So we are doing all that we can for the peer and peer engagement.
There's a question in the chat. Do you vend out your online student activities, such as like online yoga classes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. Do you vend out? No, actually, IU has a wonderful health program. It's called Healthy IU, and we actually don't need to vend out for those various things. So if we do weekday mindfulness. I don't know if that's across your campuses, but that's the 30-minute kind of lunch hour session where it helps. It's a guided meditation, just helps you take a break during the day. And those are openly active to all students across all disciplines at the campuses. So some things are already fully remote, so we don't have to really reinvent the wheel. But other times we do kind of have to tweak or leverage to make sure we're giving as much of an equitable and accessible experience as a face-to-face student. So there's
And then one more Salesforce question. What did you use for Salesforce?
What do we use before Salesforce? I don't think, at least in my time, I had used nothing besides Microsoft Excel. So, you know, the cone of shame.
Outlook.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah.
And I did spreadsheets.
Yes. And so with that, the health services, as we're talking about it, our recent addition is actually timely care. So telehealth for students, because we have so many students that are across the state of Indiana and the country, and also externally outside of the country due to active military service, other things of the sort, that we're really catering the students. So we had to partner. So the university has partnered with Timely Care to offer mental health and telehealth services for the first time. And we could not be more delighted that those services are there and will provide equity. So wherever you are, you should be able to access these resources and get everything that you need in a very timely, less than 24 hours notice to get matched with someone to talk through anything that you'd like. So it's a wonderful addition, and I think it officially launches in August, I think, to everyone. So, all right.
That's amazing. And what I love this, because I think a lot of times we're looking for like the silver bullet that will solve all of our problems. And you guys have really embraced this idea that it's an ecosystem of solutions that really over time we need to bring together to provide that full support solution. I don't know if you would agree that maybe if there's some folks on the webinar today that are starting from scratch, like you don't necessarily need everything all at once to add value, right? Like you can add these things over time and build them out as you find opportunity. Would you agree with that, Kayla?
Absolutely. We have a motto. We start with what we have and where we are, and then we start to scale from there, because there is no need. If you already have access to things, you'll be amazed what a phone call or an email to another unit and saying, hi, I think, could we collaborate on this service gap and within your own institution. And so I have seen great success in just saying, hi, I have a question. And we don't have, I personally, we did not have all of this at the beginning. So if you had asked us even just a year ago, we'd have probably a fraction of these on the slide right now. So that's amazing. It's all assisting to IU's commitment to student success. That is a pillar that we'll talk about towards the end. So.
And I figure we could probably do an entire webinar on each of these and really go deep. I think for now, we're going to zero in on your community model and how you design that. And like what your goals were. So let's talk a little bit about the online community you built and what it's doing for you.
All right, so we're going to get started. I'm going to walk you through. So we were one of the first early adopters of InScribe at Indiana University. So this is something that we've all seen. It's been used in various places across Indiana University. But we knew that we had very non-traditional adult students with busy lives. So Katie, as you were saying in your opening remarks, we truly want to meet them where they are. So we had to create several, kind of like our vended services approach, we had to create several community access points. And so what you're seeing is just the very first iteration of an access point that we have created using our IU Online vended service with InScribe. So our IU Online community, which we'll show here in a minute, is our dedicated space and how we use InScribe to build community, share knowledge, and establish that peer-to-peer engagement. So this is first initial one is we introduce this actually in our post-admissions emails that are powered through Salesforce. So this is a bird's eye view of what an actual student, Amber, would have received during her time as she was admitted to IU Online for a various program. And so we do want to encourage Amber to chat with her peers and to join that community and start engaging early and often. And we just find, again, with that motto of 3 clicks or less, we embed the InScribe link directly into the students, one of the first emails that the student receives post-admissions. So we're early and proactive. So another access point is actually in our onboarding. So we have we call this our Start Your Journey, which is virtually asynchronous orientation or onboarding. So in as little as 30 minutes, students can participate in this self-paced and publicly accessible course to learn what it's like to be an IU Online student. So we link to a multitude of connection points that they can further their investigative inquiries, but really the nuts and bolts of we built this standalone Canvas course to really meet the needs, because we know not every student is available 8 to 5 to attend orientation. And so that we really need to be wherever they are. And so we have taken this point and we encourage our students again to join our IU Online community, and we've linked InScribe in our onboarding, and it carries the same weight as our social medias. So we are wanting, if they want opportunities to engage, we give them Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and InScribe. So those are just some of the touch points as well. So you're going to start to see a pattern. So as we get closer through the funnel, as we get closer to keeping students within the pipeline, we want to make sure the IU Online community through InScribe is easily and readily available. So what we have done, which may seem repetitive, but you're noticing a pattern clearly, we want to actually have this embedded in after you're admitted on our website. So Learning Online at IU is that student hub we referred to a few times already. And it is actually introducing them to peer tutoring, peer engagement, because that's kind of the theme of step 5, is we want them to start engaging with us very soon so that we can establish that relationship, solidify that sense of belonging, as in somebody cared about me, someone's looking out for me, and shepherd me, and I'm not alone. So we actually embed that as in a student to do.
Couple of questions in the chat.
Okay,
Oh,
I'll
go
try
ahead,
my
go ahead.
best.
Timely care, is this only for your online students, or is it for all students to access across IU, including in person?
That is correct. It's the latter. So it is available to everyone, every campus, every program, and more information will come from the university about that rollout to all faculty and staff as well. We're all kind of learning together, but if any of my fellow IU colleagues, rest assured, it is as accessible and available to your face-to-face students as well.
And then going back to onboarding and orientations a little bit, does IU Online have their own onboarding and orientations, or how does that work?
So essentially, to serve the unique needs of IU Online students, we do have our own orientation model. So that is IU Online specific with our branding. However, there are many adaptable formats of that campuses, units could build themselves. We have wonderful instructional designers who could easily talk through any of those design elements if anyone's looking for pursuing such a thing. So I will say that if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to talk about that in our InScribe as we jump into the other chat after the session. So again, I could spend a lot of time talking about all the wonderful things because I mean, we're just passionate about it. We're trying to mirror all of these great resources and get them in as many places as possible because we want eyes on them. And I'd go on this, but also too, so new and current students, we're putting it in various places on our website where we know that the traffic is driven. So new students, it makes sense to put it in their new student checklist. For continuing students, it makes sense to put it under the resources tab because it's an honorable mention where they're bookmarking it and actively looking at it in the future. So yeah. So
That's awesome. And I think that is one of the best practices we've seen from working in this space is, try to bring community and resources to the students versus having them kind of hidden away where the students have to go hunt them down. You'll get better utilization, you'll get happier learners. So I know you said it was repetitive, but I think that repetition of introduction and access is really important, especially in the early days. They've got so much stuff coming at them. Like, they kind of need a few reminders to remember what's happening.
Oh, for sure. I couldn't agree more.
So do you mind just telling us a little bit about your InScribe community, how you set it up, and some of the content and conversations that are taking place in there?
Absolutely. So as I had mentioned, this is probably the motto, consistency is key. So we're continuing that continuity and following through with all those other community access points. In our community, we've laid it out exactly the same. So it is very content specific. So from a high level overview, we have information kind of compartmentalized in these communities of where they can go. So we have, obviously on the slide, you can see we have admissions information, which Stephanie Tinkle's team works with us to publish various content in there if they are, because clearly you can be a newly admitted student and still have admissions questions. That does not go away after you are admitted to a program. We also get extra help, and that is relating to and talking about all the resources that we provide, student resources, both academically and personally. So fulfilling those. And also we have career services, which connects each student or students who want to talk about those things, a space to do that and really concentrate those topics. So again, I don't think we have it mastered, and we've got plenty of work that we can do to retool our InScribe community. But yeah, I think we've just got kind of like those high level overviews, and that we want the viewership is something that we see consistently. Students are viewing this, they're going back, they're kind of using it as a frequently asked questions. So for any departments who are like, I am the frequently asked questions, because you might be a frontline person, you might consider using InScribe for this purpose so that you can minimize some of your inbox as well and give students the autonomy, because many students want to go source out or at least try to find their own answer before they call somebody else. So we've got it kind of laid out such of this way, and it seems to work really nicely for us to keep topics and conversations wrangled so that we don't have things across.
I love that. So it's consolidating all the information in central location, which is beneficial for learners. But then I love that empowering them to help themselves so that you're not answering that same question 500 times every semester. And speaking of which, it's not just the resources that you put in there to share with students, it's also a space for them to communicate with you. And so let's talk a little bit about how that's working and some of the questions that you guys get.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is the viewership of a little bit of examples is that we do have students who are curious about certain things. And again, in that admission space, here's clearly a good example. Transfer credit is something that we get asked probably a million times a day. Just in the sense of, and it's great to have students say, I'm going to post it here because other people might benefit and we might be able to crowdsource. And that's one of the best things about InScribe is that it encourages that peer-to-peer conversation and connecting individuals who might come from different backgrounds and walks of life. So students are actively answering each other's questions. Like we find that they want to be helpful to one another. It is not a ship unto yourself that is mainly kind of a vision of online education, I think, that you only want to be solitary and you want to do this on your own and struggle in silence. You do not have to. So those conversations that we're facilitating is just very similar things of what we're actually facilitating in the chat. I mean, besides the technical vended services, but hey, do you have campus specific information when I apply to IU Online, since you are across all 7 campuses? And students are actively saying, yes, you have a home campus. Here's how to find that. And so that didn't require an admissions counselor or an onboarding specialist or a success coach to answer that. And then students in the academics, they're always asking about classes. How do I know what classes should I take? Where can I find my degree maps that we have? And we have that readily accessible. And what we're finding is that we have many staff and they're all wonderful, actively engaged with our students, but our students are just as engaged behind the scenes. So they really do appreciate this resource being available. And so we're constantly thinking of ways, especially with our growth and our centralization model that we're adopting, of how to continue to scale this and foster that engagement. But if anyone's telling you that students don't care about other students, I would think take a thought on that. Take a pause. Really think about that. Because as the human element, if COVID has taught us anything, we really do care about our neighbors and what's going on.
I appreciate that so much. I'm always saying, I feel like it was this great, like the big lie was that online students don't need or care about these types of connections and relationships. And we've learned that I totally agree, is absolutely not the truth. Do you want to touch on that question, Danielle? I know Whitney has been like a superstar question answer in the chat. Do you want to touch on that or do you want me to keep going, Danielle?
I think we should touch on that. So are you using student workers to moderate these types of communities, or is it just pro staff?
So essentially, it is our staff who are monitoring these and various staff from all of our portfolios. So financial aid, we have our AD for financial services who is monitoring that, but we don't have any student workers. I mean, unless Whitney has hired some, and I don't know about that, which could be total plausible.
That's why I said stay tuned. Not yet, but who knows?
But yes, all of these communities, these sub-communities, these topics are all managed by a handful of professional staff or staff members who are in student services who are helping shepherd this. We have other than the students commenting and helping answer the questions, we are doing that all behind the scenes. But do not give the impression it's a single person. It's a divide and conquer type of attitude. We know we all are not accessible at the same time, so we all have the ability to take ownership of certain areas, certain communities, and provide that information. So
awesome.
And then there's one more question.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Explain the difference in between an advisor and a success coach. Excuse me.
Absolutely. So I'll give you the skinny on that. So academic advisors are all things academic. So if we're talking about, what course should I take? I need to meet my humanities requirement. Would astronomy or would political science be a better one for me given my career goals? That is an academic advisor's specialty and wheelhouse. But our success coaches are there essentially as like personal cheerleaders. We're checking in with you. We're keeping tabs on your academic progress. We know if things take a turn for, not so great. We're picking up the phone. We're calling you we're letting you know that we see some notes, might see that you're struggling. And so we're doing some of that proactive outreach. And so we assist in that holistic support. So our coaches bring in that space and really talk about goal setting and other things that maybe academic advisors just don't have the time. Everyone wants to have these conversations. Advisors are just very busy individuals, and they don't have the time maybe to talk about all the other things as well. So that's how we approach that. I hope that answers the question, Danielle.
It sure does. There's another question. So how much content does the staff need to add to the InScribe online community? Or let's see, peer-to-peer chats to keep it active with students?
So periodically throughout the term, there are always some times that we know we're shuffling information out. So for instance, for our continuing students, if we're talking about graduation procedures, we're actively going in and kind of prepping that information or updating new things and saying, hey, new process or something to disseminate that information to kind of spur that community when we see there's a lull. So we're actively trying to find things, but we're not just going to put something in there just to start a conversation, because with online learners, importance is key. They want to know what's important. So we have to be very concerted in our efforts to tell them exactly what they need and have a fruitful conversation rather than just, I don't know, some other relational conversation. Like we want both of them. So sometimes you just want the transaction. So hence the, oh, I viewed the post and I moved on and I may have liked it, but that's still an engagement. That's still, hey, we see you. So.
Awesome. There's no more questions in the chat at this time, and I think I'll hold the rest of the questions for the networking lounge.
Right. I know we're just a tad bit over time. We've got just a little, so I will wrap this up, but this is a sneak peek. So if you are here on the call or watching the recording, this is our next iteration of InScribe. So we are actively embedding InScribe into our Canvas courses. And Whitney will talk about this in just a moment when I turn it over. But some of our active, we've done the market research. We know that some of our programs, a handful of them are designed to scale. They have the ability to scale. And so we've coined them programs of scale. So these second 8 weeks courses and these programs that have the capacity to scale and the motivation behind it, we are just bringing everything in-house. So all those wonderful access points that we talked about, we're bridging the gap between community and academic support. So it's all coming in-house, and it's wonderful. So we're merging all of these resources in one place. So a student can be actively engaged in their coursework in one of these programs of scale, see the Q&A community, click on it, engage, and then get all of the resources at once without ever leaving Canvas, which is wonderful. So, all right.
Awesome.
Whew. I think I've talked quite a bit. I think I'm going to put myself on mute and get some water.
Great. So I think we just have a couple of minutes to, I mean, that was a great introduction to what's coming next. You guys want to talk briefly about, you know, where you see IU Online in general going, and then kind of where to start for people on the call, and then we'll jump over to that networking event.
Perfect. Sounds great. Well, yes, thank you for such an active Q&A in the chat. That's been super fun. I have been trying to keep up with that as my colleagues were presenting. And we sort of just touched on this as we started to look at other ways that we're embedding InScribe. And that really lends itself to just, we're in a space of figuring out what the future of IU Online is going to be. So we have 3 pillars that are part of the Vision 2030 for Indiana University. And then each of the campuses, as well as the Office of Online Education, are building out our visions that fit within this framework. And President Witten snuck in one for us and added in that we are going to grow online by 200%. She didn't ask us to do it by 20 or 30. She went big and said 200%. And so part of our initiative with some of this really comprehensive wraparound service model, centralization of a lot of these service units, we haven't all sat within my portfolio. That's not where we started from, but we've been gradually migrating to have that really nice integrated model, so that we can share best practices and we can have those seamless handoffs. And that, combined with these programs of scale, are really part of how we hope to meet all of these initiatives that are part of the Vision 2030, but primarily grow our enrollment by 200% and really lend online as an access point for student success and student opportunity, which we feel that we serve that very, very well. And then if you want to click one more slide, Katie, I know that we have talked a couple of different times about, well, what if we don't have anything, or what if we only have some things, and where should we start, and how do we, engage in this? And so this was something that we had put together that really mirrors our experience and sort of what we went through, in addition to looking at that research and kind of differentiating what we wanted to look like in the future. These were the types of questions that we asked ourselves. And this is what I would encourage you all to think of and continue conversations at your institutions around those key questions. First, know what your goals are. That was something that was like, oh my goodness, do we even know what we're trying to, before President went and told us what we were trying to accomplish? Did we know what we were trying to accomplish? And it really came back to that seamless experience, successful enrollment. That's another terminology that we use a lot. We want to enroll graduates. We want to enroll students that are going to be successful. And then you take those goals and you figure out where you're at right now, right? Most of us are not there. Some of us have a long ways to go to get there, and that's okay. But you can develop those key priorities or those strategic priorities to start moving yourself towards those goals. And then when you think about those vended solutions, do you have current infrastructure? That's a question that we ask ourselves every time we want to offer something. Is it going to be more efficient and effective for us to build this in-house? Or is this a place where we need to look for a vended solution? And it's okay. The answer either way to those questions is perfectly okay. It's what's going to work best for you. And then really being mindful around those communication plans and those points of differentiation. Being as proactive and short, just like we talked about in that community space, if you can do that in your communications, where they know this is my next step. I don't know about you all, I have 6 children. If somebody doesn't tell me what I'm supposed to do and when I'm supposed to be there and which kid I'm supposed to have with me, it's probably not going to happen. So our students need that same type of guidance as they're moving through their education. So just being really intentional. I'm a big fan of saying you can't over communicate. As long as you're communicating the right thing at the right time and there's action associated with it, people are going to appreciate it. And then know what makes you special, know what makes you different. Points of differentiation are really important to our students and something that they're looking for. And so the more you can surface that, the better off you'll be. And then as the longtime and forever love admissions professional, have a way to track everything you do. None of this means anything if you cannot demonstrate that there is a metric that demonstrates success within any of these initiatives. And I know multiple of you have asked that in the chat, and we'd be happy to share those from our experience. But know what success means to you across these various endeavors and have a way to track that and be able to report out on it. Not only will it help you get more things in the future when you can demonstrate that the things you're doing are working, but it's just a really good indicator of if you're on the right path or if you need to pivot and try something a little bit different or enhance something you're currently doing. So with that, I think we're going to jump over into our other community, and Stephanie, Kayla, and I will be there and be more than happy to continue answering any questions you might have.
That was wonderful. Well, thank you guys all so much for joining us today, for sharing your story. I know Danielle dropped contact information for you guys into the chat as well. So I know we would all love for you to connect with us either through email or through LinkedIn if you have follow-up questions. But with that, to your point, Whitney, we are going to jump over to this additional networking space. So it's a little more interactive. You can actually talk and talk directly to our partners. Danielle just put that link in the chat. So we have a few minutes. We hope to see some of you over in that space. And thank you again for joining us.